Introduction to typography. Typography is the style, arrangement, appearance of types that matter. In this class, we will be looking at letter, word, line, column, paragraph, grid layout, visual hierarchy, and legibility. Typography is types that matter. Types that matter is stuff. Typography is books. Type is derived from the Greek word typos, meaning impression. The first printed books were made from movable blocks of wood or cast metal. These blocks were arranged into lines and paragraphs and inked up and printed on paper. Now we arrange type on computers and print it in a similar manner on lithoplates or digital printing with ink on paper. On the left, we're looking at the Lindisfarne Gospels, circa 7th century. Alignment and type truly becoming ornamental. Type becomes objects. The designer was obviously cognizant of alignment and page layout. We can see the grid format. On the right, we're looking at the Gutenberg Bible, circa 1450. Johann Gutenberg designed movable type and made books very similar to the way we see current books made, with ink transferred to paper and published in massive volumes. These are book designs done from around 1950, on the left by Ben Shahn, on the right by Paul Rand. If we look at the top, we can see the playfulness of the numeric forms and the interplay of the geometry. On the bottom, we're looking at Ben Shahn. Ben Shahn's iconic script and handwriting that we could see throughout his career. On the right, we can look at Paul Rand, and he often used repetition. We can see the F creating repetition with the life of forms and art, FFF, and Dada. Dada was a playful, often nonsensical art movement, and we can see the playful and nonsensical aspects of the typography. On the top, we're looking at Chip Kidd. Chip Kidd is a designer who worked for Knopf Publishing and is still creating book jackets and covers. He's also a writer, and these were 2 books that he wrote. And if we can look at the cheese monkeys up close, you can see that there are pencil lines underneath the typography. He's very interested in hand-drawn type and the history of typography. He's also interested in geometric forms and the linear aspects of typography. At the bottom, we're looking at Chris Ware. We can see that he is very playful with his hand-drawn typography. Typography is also layout design, and we're looking at layout and design formats, most importantly the grid, that have played a large part in page and poster layout. Typography is logo design. We're looking here at Paul Rand, and these are brand and identity designs that he made between the 60s and the 90s. He's very much an icon of brand design. We can still see some of these brands used today, and they very much have a lot of staying power today because of their iconic design. These logos are obviously centered around typography. The left design is the logo of Obama's campaign, the O signifying Obama, and the iconic VW logo, and the BP logo, where we see the B and the P as the same signature flipped over. But here is a very iconic design, the FedEx logo, and we can see that the negative space or the counterform between the E and the X creates an arrow, the arrow meaning delivering fast. So the negative space or the counterform obviously becomes part of the design. Likewise, we see it in Arabic on the bottom, and again the arrow is employed into the design to again give the FedEx logo the look of getting these packages delivered faster. Here we're looking at a retro stereo logo. We can see that the word stereo is defined by a type style based on elongated rectangles. And we can see that this diagonal line is what gets the viewer to move throughout these rectangles. Typography is application design. Fitbit uses very much a format on a grid. We can see the geometric shapes creating division between how the hierarchy of information is relayed to the viewer. With application design, typographic hierarchy becomes the most important aspect of designing an application. What the viewer sees first is what dictates the next place that they travel to. Typography is communication. The first forms of written communication were found in cuneiform. Cuneiform was a script that was the earliest known forms of written expression around 3000 BC in Sumer. That's on the top left corner. On the top right corner, we we see hieroglyph, which was found around 2500 BC. And that was using shapes and symbols, and very linear shapes and symbols, to represent language. And then we move further on in history and we look at the Greek tablet. It's around 600 BC. The origins of the Greek tablet are the closest relationship to letter forms that we see today. Moving along in history, we are looking at Toulouse-Lautrec's poster designs. They were advertisements for the cabaret. This one was for the ambassadors. We often see him using hand-lettered graphics, and he deconstructs formal type. The poster on the right, from 1875, shows a poster of the Alexandra Palace, and this palace held different events. We can see the circus performances, the operas, the military orchestral concerts, the organ recitals, etc. And we see that the typography is found in sans serif, Egyptian typefaces, and modern typefaces, where predominantly before we would see more traditional, old-style typefaces. This is a Bauhaus exhibition poster from 1923. We can see that they created a grid and oriented the poster for their exhibition using very geometric shapes, circles and straight lines. This was designed by artist Juice Schmidt. De Stijl was an art movement that Theo van Doesburg created circa 1917 to 1920. This was a poster for a De Stijl exhibition. We are looking at some Russian propaganda posters here. On the left we see Gustav Klutzis. He was a Russian constructivist around 1930. And what this says is, let's accomplish the plan of great deeds. On the right we see Nina Vitulina in 1941. And this was a World War II poster about privacy infringement. It says, "Keep your mouth shut. The walls have ears." We are looking at Shepard Fairey, a contemporary poster artist. On the left, we see his "We the people are greater than fear," and "Power and equality, power to the people." I think these are very relevant with the current political climate that's going on. These were a shout out to the Black Panther posters that Emory Douglas designed in the 60s. They're also a homage to Mao propaganda posters, subverting retro imagery and making it contemporary. On the left, we see a Mao propaganda poster, and we can see how Shepard Fairey was very much inspired by these communist posters. And on the right, we can see how he's very inspired by the Black Panther posters, the newspaper illustrations made by Emory Douglas. Typography is typeface design. These drawings are from Albrecht Dürer, circa 1525. Dürer was the first to derive at a standardized geometric way to create a Roman typeface. These are Dürer's Roman typefaces, and they're very similar to Times New Roman. We can see the length of the Q. We can see the serifs looking very much like the current Times New Roman. On the left, we're looking at Universal 1925 by Herbert Bayer. It was a Bauhaus font, and it's still used today. On the right, we're looking at Ex Beelden 1920, made by Theo van Doesburg, and this was De Stijl's typeface. Lastly, we're looking at Paul Renner's Futura from 1927. It's a sans serif typeface. It broke conventions and is based on rigid geometry. Futura is often seen on public buildings like libraries and post offices. Typography is all around. It's in cemeteries, it's on plaques of buildings, it's in the sidewalk, it's on a bike rack, it's in a parking garage, it's at a post office, it's on your cell phone, it's where you go out to eat, it's where you go to school. For homework, I want you guys to go on a walk and take pictures found in nature. I also want you to look at architecture and look and search for letter forms that we find either in nature or in architectural forms. I want you to look on Canvas and check it out. I have some examples, and very much like the example we're looking at. Have fun. Good luck.